Hello, Americans. And Chris Murphy, you have more roles with the war in, in Iran than President Trump, more ways, some ways. And it's not personal. In other words, you guys, it's also your health. And you guys had your campuses sickly distinctly, but sickly non distinctly too, replaced with James Madison had declassified details about how and why there was a breaching method that had everyone rolls with all kinds of things they didn't want to have rolls with or they were sensed. And through our own, and through the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, overt, a whole bunch of forward and domestic countries, fake news, all that at the same time, worse. In other words, they also faked transcripts into branch with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, before and after the World Trade Center attack, with other countries involved, foreign and domestic military, right through the wars. Then you guys jump into that. Your people jump into conversations dishonestly. You guys are supposed to follow mandated law, not fake conversations with people. Channel 3 News attached me to fake conversations with themselves. They have a bunch of people at the corners of Elm Street and Route 3 in Weathersfield and Rocky Hill that sought me out years apart on my street to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have federal evidence in crimes, identity theft, fraud, slander, with the same intelligence families, also inter-campuses, inter-cities, and next to Trinity College, like with Eric Oliveri and his educators involved too. And with him, all kinds of things they have to hide. In other words, and identity theft, fraud, slander against me trying to make a fake exception is one of the things they do on a mass scale for fake exceptions. Nature forces them to do that, and a breach method shows them they have to hide how names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and the interbranch at the same time, and as ones with a whole bunch of other countries involved with them and their kids. Time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, abuses of the kids, of the leaders of the kids, sickly distinctly because the difference of that was used too, and the difference of guilt at places, all natures of crime scenes, including campuses, where and how they're involved further with the principal upskirt nature. With worse, I caught them with first forcing that, and with retired police chiefs. A police chief, Cintron, is involved with people named Cololo and Demoro, planting evidences at the corner of and Mayano, and with people named um, Mazzucato, per them, per their people. John Miles sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He's got roles with it. Rick C. and Faglione's confessions too. With the Rick C. and Faglione, he didn't say his confession. Rick C. and Faglione sought me out to make confessions. Increasingly, their family is involved with the O'Brien family and the Cololo family in the Airbnb that are increasingly involved with people named Mark Violet and Justin Kovinskis and others who've been planting evidences on my street with people from other areas and people tied to them with involved with multiple child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, first wars. There's a Mr. Murphy and his daughter. I never had a personal conversation with her. That was a principal when I went to that school of the principal child abuser. And there are more people involved with that too, further then and now. And untimely deaths and roles of murders and body dumping spots were brought up with through the course of that and brought up before, but with as untimely death confessions and roles with one on Trinity College. And with the same people on my street planting evidences from other areas. They forced my neighbor to collusion intercity with them and with the other neighbors. Involved also further with a Phil Cololo and pretending passions and oh, he was saying my neighbors was unclear. You guys brought me in fake conversations with them. Bob Chase said there's a Phil Cololo further involved with the falsified police reports. And I didn't get a response for what I caught them doing, forcing with the Bob Chase. The principal obscure nature they can think of, they caught them off campus anyway. I caught them with worse digital crimes with them. In the same house, I involved with whiting forensics and former mayors from Weathersfield too, increasingly. Roles with untimely deaths years apart too, with the ones that brought it up and tied to them. I never saw Robert Rodriguez on my campus in my life, on a campus in my life. I didn't respond to him each time when he was trying to say things, but and with timing where I was going to be there by exploiting a field near my house to put fake ties to me from other areas. And his collusion slash S with people tied to the same house, increasingly with Wethersfield Police Department. Faked conversations with me as a kid and as an adult. They have a bunch of people with the court, with New Britain Superior Court, involved with these Mendez police and police named Dylan, involved also with retired police chiefs and their family members and intimate ties, involved with the same house slash S and spots at and where next to where they moved from. Collusion slash S through time. In other words, oh well, how come you were there? How come you went to the prom with them? In other words, that made me feel bad. You did a little trick by telling me where I was going to go with that too. I even know who my neighbor used to hang around with very close. Increasingly, people on Church Street and all Wethersfield. So I mean, Joe DeMoro and Mike Kerr have pit bulls with people that abuse girls and force them to collusions also with the John DeMoro and others with their educators. Mr. Neville has collusions all along Route 3. People I never even had classes with, increasingly people tied to mayors involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me with their family members. And all kinds of investigations investigators used to measure and maintain. They're going to leave details out and collusions out. And I still didn't get a response for what I caught them doing with the principal child abuser, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and his prison, collusions with him, forcing him, and collusions with other patients and criminals before they were in that jail, and with names next to the body dumping spot of the serial killer, involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, and the courts and their family members, and police forms at the same time, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, foreign and domestic military, before the World Trade Center attack, as ones that then were and are increasingly are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed to me. Collusion slash S also facilitated for themselves with people named Scalora. And with the Saudis, they forced the collusion slash S interstates and internationally. Per worse, with ones also at and next to the World Trade Center the morning of the attack, the night before it, in other ways, short term and long term before it. DeMoro also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Roles with John DeMoro and others with various natures of organized crimes with kids, and with a Mr. Abruzzi. A Mr. Abruzzi is also brought up at Central Connecticut State University with others involved with the Joe DeMoro with sexual medical offenders of kids with the FBI and a Dean Judd and his kid. Someone who said his kid's federal crime if he did. And in other words, that was after when they didn't get the response, they didn't get the reaction they wanted. When they asked me for a request for help. Because of what I found out was I didn't know his name was involved yet. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in various Hartford courts in the Britain Superior Court had collusions with predicate acts, federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders of people intercities and at the town lines who are connected. Collusion slash us also all along Route 3 in conjunctions to that, like the state judicial branch offices in Wethersfield, and conjunctions to the state corrections offices into that. And their roles with the untimely deaths at Trinity College and on my street, those tight connections. A Joshua Stryker also faked conversations with me and ties to me between campuses, intercities, and intra-cities with others too. I never had a word of conversation with Joshua Stryker in my life. They tried to paint a fake exception to make it look like other years ago with people with the state judicial branch offices. And Eric Alveri wanted me to sell drugs through UPS. But he was trying to frame me because he has roles with the intelligence community and roles with abuses of kids by adults and the campuses tied to it, where he's in the background using people's names as a fake, having people make a fake exception. In other words, planted evidences next to people that are involved with the World Trade Center attack and the judicial branch offices is increasingly collusions with Eric Alveri, with a whole bunch of other people, with the same people involved with child abusers of mixed natures proven, but more recorded then and now. Involved with the state judicial branch offices in the corners of Elm Street and Rocky Hill and Wethersfield. Elm Street and Route 3. The ones in Wethersfield and Rocky Hill. These are also people involved with religious differences and with black, white, KKK, Confederate flag theme intelligence that are not legitimately using their differences other people's. You have interbranch switching and forging names and sequences. A bunch of people in the Brit Superior Court are involved with these names, with more sexual medical offenders of kids, with these Mendez, Weathersfield police. Get me off. I never had a word of conversation with that older man, his brother. And at the police station, he forced my Saudi ex to collusion/S with them and with people named Demora. And I knew them with Scaloras before I knew them. And they have the same house/S involved with sexual and medical offenders of them and with criminal enterprises. And not legitimately, if they're undercover, whatever, too. A whole bunch of places tied to a Jerry Kerr, more than one Jerry Kerr and a Michael Kerr are also involved. They recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed. They have people involved too, with the class of 1993 involved with Facebook, with the Brit Superior Court made rape threats before the principal child abuser was taken down. They have roles with the Facebook page of the campus of the principal child abuser and other campuses. And murders were also involved with the people that brought that up and confessions tied to that. And roles with the probation officer, reportedly of Mike Oliver, at the time Gray Kyler was shot. It's connected too to people associated with it and their roles with the FBI too and other agencies. There's a whole bunch of people too. Kids from a grammar school I went, recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed. There's a Lance Cuddy involved also with more teachers involved with the sexual and medical offenders of kids. I never saw a Lance Cuddy on a campus in my life. He's involved with state corrections officers, with the people involved also with WTNH, and a whole bunch of people with whiting forensics with them, with digital crimes, with sexual and medical offenders of kids. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence, please. Chris, Senator Murphy, do what's right, please. Get me off fake conversations with the Weathersfield police. I only know about they did it when I was a kid too, because the news pretended it for them, because they had high libel aggressions, because the kids who did go speak with them. I only know Chris Walters seeking me out to make confessions and demonstration of his roles with various natures of federal evidences crimes, identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shifts, roles with all ages and natures of investigations. Investigators use remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought. They have roles with the cocaine and all other types of drugs at Trinity College, with the various military people associated with this, Joshua Stryker, and his roles with the UPS people. Also with people tied to men and women with the name Bobby, involved with Covington Street, with prosecutors and judges. There's a Brian Silver, and there's a Judge Smith, and there are white, black, female judges involved with the sexual and medical offenders of kids who are also KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, Irish theme, all these different countries. In other words, Korean theme. One's named Violet, and people associated with them. They have a Brian Bonin, and his neighbors are involved with Hartford Hospital with sexual medical offenders of kids, and their roles with various natures of drugs and medicines with foreign and domestic, and their neighbors involved with body dumping spots, identity theft, fraud, slander. I never saw Brian Bonin on my campus in my life. He sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. People who are now involved with the Board of Education, and they hid what that was recorded tied to them. In other words, and these are people increasingly with the extended family members of courts and police forms and overt criminal enterprise for everyone. And everyone will tell you this. Everyone speak your brother. All exceptions will come with demonstrations / so the same thing, but no one's following mandated law. Part of the way they get away with it is by pretending that, I didn't understand people. Get me off fake conversations with WFSP. It's not hard to understand. You guys wipe away the evidences of individuals, even if they are leaders. The president tries to use fake news as a premise. You have people from Saudi Arabia forced to collusions with CBS, and a whole bunch of names tied to them through time that are involved in intercities, on and off campuses, and all with the predicate acts with facts method I recorded. Method /S. And it's discerned because nature's recording it. and we're all going to discern it. But you guys have the law. The only reason it's not discerned is you guys are putting fake things in databases. They're switching and forging names into branch. A bunch of people with Harper Courts and the Britain Superior Court and Brian Silver also with them involved with a bunch of people with the district court with all sides of criminal civil cases and the court's names, time collusions, the police forms, their sources, mayor's family members. So other things are recorded, like the timing of how they brought up the principal child abusers campus to me first on Facebook with the Rod Reed, who confirmed to me things I didn't respond to in real life. I never had a conversation at all, word at all conversation with him in real life. He repeated confessions about his Rose's untimely death, and his reported wife died. And he also has roles with the word logistics, and his roles with on the border place. And since before that place was there, with people associated with him also, like a Daryl Chandler. I only know him seeking me out to make confessions, demonstrate, confirm. He has collusion/S with people from Korea per him, and his educators with criminally foreign uses of databases, identity theft, fraud, slander, and uses of corners of buildings. Collusion/S with identity theft, fraud, slander, and pretending other. In other words, increasingly and intra cities too. He has people with Newington, with the Marines too, and Wethersfield Marines involved with this Kerr family on Meadowgate, and people on Valleycrest Street with his name tomorrow. And Kerr, also brought up by Officer Jerry Miller and others, other ways, involved on Facebook with them. Too, with the Britain Superior Court, has rape threats with a KNERR, like a passion crime after the World Trade Center attack, because they were hiding what I caught. They requested help from me. I didn't know it was involved with the courts. I mean, I knew because he said it. I didn't know it was involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Lusky, and what eventually became the World Trade Center attack. Central Connecticut State University has a Dean Judd and his family members involved with Luigi Guerrero, a bunch of people directly and indirectly involved with John Maiano, who sought me out in 1994 to make confessions. And his name was repeated to me before that by one of the people involved with the Phil Collo and others involved with coaches of teams involved with conversations with the John Maiano, planting evidences with them and their roles with the agencies and the intercities locations involved. So please, in other words, Michigan, like Marshall Plan, they have to set up a way for people to in other words, we are a value/value progression. They speak about order, but they speak about order at countries A sickly distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly too. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought. It is order, as a distinct identity of order, that which generates individual species bodies of individual bodies, and group differences like two eyes and two sexes across totally distinct individual species bodies of individual bodies. So we can discern that nature itself is generating that. Its identity itself, to an extent, discernibly replaced too, where that is what is sane or most probable or scientific. Quinnipiac University, for example, in Connecticut, has a number of people involved with sequence shifts and involved with the Fred Grisey, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and people associated with the John Maiano and his father, with the modern pastry, where they lied to the modern pastry with a Bryan family and a Collo family too. I never saw them on a campus of my life, modern pastry people, but they have roles with, in other words, with this people making confessions tied to them because the little coward John Maiano and the interbranch forging and switching names and fake conversations because they grew up as fakes, using the right to lie when they don't have the right to lie. Don't be a little coward too, John Maiano. Get to tomorrow and the switching say, don't pretend you were recording anything legitimately around me, you fake punk. And get them on paper. I wanted to, because you were brought up with the names further involved with the sexual medical offenders of kids. Like this Bob Chase brought up a Phil Collo involved with the falsified police report. And they wouldn't even let me see it. I didn't even see it yet. They put more than one falsified police report for the same arrest. Multiple police departments involved with the same house/s at the same time, and they're switching and forging names into branch. Get them on paper, please. Mission creep. The president said reciprocity and love. And the difference of that, you guys can't. We're supposed to be simultaneous. That's what his communication is belonging. You guys changed what he said about fake news. The president had made no sense. In other words, the news is faking World Trade Center attack. Their roles, they're leaking their roles. They're demonstrating their roles with people from Saudi Arabia, people from, I don't even know their names too, just per the dress, and their roles with those locations. A Kerr family, a Damore family, a Violet family, others that were in two speech classes I had, when I was in Wethersfield in high school. There are increasingly collusions with Elm Streets and Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, including a religious spot there with the born-again Christians. Involved increasingly people involved with the World Trade Center attack, directly and indirectly, and with international business in all these countries that are involved with time collusions through time, with border states and border countries, families who have time collusions with the Saudi attackers. But right where and how America's name identity was used remotely, and Saudi Arabia's was, and it is, just like the A through Z, their identities are used remotely. Certain type of victim/hyper victim that is maintained, only capable of blaming on other things other than themselves, relative to how the breaching method keeps American history, pretended science, using the syntax of what they said, pretending that's free speech, even though James Madison declassified about why and how, for a whole bunch of reasons tied to the breaching method. Nobody had free speech, and everybody had to pretend other to an extent, or that body was sensed and it was adapted to, including if it was a majority of people, including if it was everyone of any modern country. And it was, in other words, and even easier to use remotely the styles, the logic, nature, law, the syntax of any grouping of countries. Any individual is going to speak for them. In other words, get down. They're going to speak about international law. They're still using that phrase, transatlantic slave trade. Get down. They're tactically delusions wrought too. They're screening it. They're framing our founders for slavery because right through collusions with the hyperform they showed A through Z countries how to read their own histories. Not in other words, changing what our founders communicated. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. See Marbury versus Madison. Again. So in other words, red means out of nowhere, for better than free, to provide things that everyone needs, way better than we're being charged for. There's still the torture, extortion, slavery method /S we have to address. Speak about order, we're going to keep it being led by that which generates all differences and the individual species bodies of individual bodies. Or it shows us per correlation, we're using systems abridged from its own. It shows us with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and a special difference forced away from here. But excuse me. The suburbs were designed to induce that, to induce negative value, nature progressions, acts, and natures, and demonstration of it. The breaching method knew that it would also be in demonstration of itself. Nature itself shows us there's a breaching method involved that country's A through Z. It is replaced also right from the communications of James Madison, actually. We are not supposed to use his words, pretending that anyone had free speech. If anyone had free speech, you don't vote on slavery. And that would have been brought up. Black pupils, period. Get them out to paper, one name and sequence. Their whole careers were kept criminally for both tactical delusions wrong. They're the predicate acts with facts methods, wire crime acts and methods, digital crimes. Don't hide, fake, and change. Get them on paper too. I want a response for what they with the principal child abuser confessed and confirmed, and Mike Emmett is one of the ones also with a Mike Levine and people all along Route 3 involved with organized crimes and federal evidences crimes. I never had a word of conversation with a Mike Levine. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. And I want a response. And get me off a fake conversation with him. It's a branch. Get them on paper now. And get that Mendez away, those Mendez brothers away from the kids. Now. Too. Get them on paper.